Hello and welcome to Scholarph Edu. This is our UTME prep series, and in this we're looking at biology 2019. In this year, the major topics that are featured, there are questions on classification of living organisms, movement, irritability, genetics and variation, ecology. We also have questions on body systems like the respiratory system, the circulatory system, the support system, the reproductive system. So if you're new to this channel, be sure to subscribe and like and share our content. Okay, first question is a question on living organisms. Which of the following is a characteristic of non-living things? A. Ability to respond to stimuli. B. Ability to produce young ones. C. Inability to respond to stimuli. And D. Ability to respire. Okay, so living organisms, they have certain characteristics that are summarized as Mr. Niger Card, and that is that is movement, respiration, nutrition, irritability or sensitivity, growth, excretion, reproduction, competition, adaptation, and death or mortality. These are characteristics of living organisms. So living organisms, they express these characteristics to varying degree. However, non-living organisms, they do not have this characteristic. Okay, one of these characteristics is irritability or sensitivity. Non-living organisms, they are unable to respond to stimuli. They are not irritable. Now, mind you that these characteristics, they are biological. They have a biological basis or a biochemical basis, not mechanical or simply chemical basis. For example, the thermometer, the thermometric liquid, that's mercury or alcohol, for example, can respond to a change in temperature. However, that response is chemical. It's not biochemical. All right, it is simply chemical. And you have other responses like that, like mechanical. All right, so the response that we're saying there is the biochemical response to stimuli. Next is a question on ecology. Which of the following is not concerned with water cycle? A. Condensation. B. Evaporation. C. Respiration. And D. Oxidation. Okay, so the water cycle features processes that contribute to the uptake of water and the output as well. So the major processes that are involved in the water cycle, they are evaporation, condensation, perspiration, which relates with respiration, and precipitation. Evaporation takes water, all right. Condensation returns water, perspiration returns water, precipitation also returns water. The process here that is not connected with the water cycle is oxidation, and that is option D. Next question is also on ecology. Which of the following belong to the third level of a food chain? A. Producer. B. Tertiary consumers. C. Decomposer. And D. Secondary consumer. Okay, so in a grazing food chain, the order is, it starts with the producer, all right, which are usually autotrophs, mostly plants. Then you have the primary consumer, which are like herbivores that feed on those plants. And then the secondary consumer feeds on the primary consumer. And then the tertiary consumer feeds on the secondary consumer. And finally, you have the decomposers that deal with the leftover. All right. Now, an example of a food chain is this. So you have the grass, for example. The grasshopper feeds on the grass. So the grasshopper here is the primary consumer. The snake feeds on the grasshopper. The hawk feeds on the snake. All right. The third level here, which of course is the question here, is the secondary consumer. They are in the third level. All right. And the secondary consumer, they could be carnivores or they could be omnivores. So that makes D the correct option. Next question is on body systems. Which of the following has an open circulatory system? A. Cockroach. B. Rat. C. Man. And D. Monkeys. Insects have an open circulatory system where the blood is not confined between the heart and the blood vessels. That makes A. Cockroach the correct option. Next is a question on body system and movement. The parts of the vascular bundle that are responsible for the respective transportation of food and water are A. Cambium and phelloderm. B. Meristem and phellogen. C. Xylem and phloem. D. Phloem and xylem. Okay, so the vascular bundle basically is the conductive. It's comprised of the conductive tissues in plants. All right. The phloem is the conductive tissue that carries the photosynthesis, that is food that are manufactured from photosynthesis, while the xylem transports the water. So now for questions like this, you have to be very, very careful of the order. So the order here is food and water. So for food, you have the phloem, and for water and dissolved minerals, you have the xylem. So that makes D the correct option. Be wary of option C. The order is wrong here. Okay, the xylem is for water and the phloem is for food. Next is a question on body systems, nutrition, and digestive system. Erepsin converts proteins to peptones, B, proteins to polypeptides, C, polypeptides to amino acid, and D, polypeptides to peptone. Okay, so erepsin, which is produced in the intestinal juice and the pancreatic juice, breaks down polypeptides to amino acids. That's option C. Next is a question on movement and support system. The longest bones of the body is A, ulna, B, femur, C, radius, and D, ossicles. The longest and strongest bone in the body is the femur. That is the thigh bone. The smallest is the ossicle, is the stapes in the ear. So you have B as the correct option. Next is a question on living organism, movement and support system. Which of the following has no backbone? A, squid, B, tilapia, C, frog, and D, snake. Okay, so animals can be classified into two major groups, the vertebrates and the invertebrates. The vertebrates, they are the animals that have backbone, while the invertebrates are the animals without backbone. And here you have the squid. The squid is an invertebrate with no backbone. That's A. Next on nutrition and digestive system. Ferlin reagent is used to test for A, reducing sugars, B, non-reducing sugars, C, proteins, and D, fats. The Ferlin's reagent is used to test for reducing sugars. It is used to distinguish water-soluble carbohydrates from ketones. Next on body system, the circulatory system specifically. Which of the following is not connected with transportation? A, plasma, B, red blood cell, C, white blood cell, and D, cytoplasm. Okay, so the white blood cell is mainly connected with maintaining the body's immunity. So it helps to fight the body to fight against pathogens and infections. The red blood cell transports oxygen. All right, the plasma transports nutrients, while the cytoplasm is the medium. Excluding the nucleus, the medium, like the cell medium, where cell organelles are suspended and where transport occurs. All right, so the white blood cell here is not connected with transportation. That's option C. Next on genetics and variation, the structure above represents A, RNA, B, DNA, C, chromosomes, and D, genes. Alright, the helical structure above is the structure of the DNA as discovered by Watson and Crick. That's option B. Next is a question relating to genetics and variation. The part labeled II represents A, protein strand, B, cytosine, C, glucose, and D, phosphates. So what we have above is the helical structure of the DNA. Now, the part labeled II, this part here, is what we call the sugar phosphate backbone, that is D. While this part here, that is labeled I, is the nitrogenous nucleobase pair. Okay, it's a pair of base containing nitrogen, and those bases, they could be adenine, they could be guanine, they could be thymine, or they could be cytosine. Alright, the thymine bonds with the adenine and the cytosine with the guanine. So it forms a pair like that. So you have a pair where you have a thymine with an adenine and a cytosine with a guanine. Next is on classification of living organisms. The highest hierarchy of classification is A, kingdom, B, phylum, C, class, and D, species. Okay, the highest hierarchy of classification is actually the domain, followed by kingdom. But going by the options I have here, there is no domain here. Alright, so the next highest level or hierarchy of classification will be the kingdom. That is option A. The lowest is variators. Next is a question on microorganisms. Which of the following is prokaryotic? A, Homo sapien, B, Panicum maximus, C, Treponema pallidum, D, Gallus domestica. Okay, Treponema pallidum is a prokaryotic bacteria that is responsible for syphilis and yours. Homo sapiens, that is humans, while Panicum maximus, that is guinea grass, and Gallus domestica is the domestic fowl. So C here is the correct option. Next is a question on classification of living organisms. The male organ of a bryophyte is known as A, antheridium, B, sporangium, C, archegonium, and D, prothallus. The antheridium is the male reproductive organ in the bacterium. Option C, that's archegonium, that is a female reproductive organ. So the correct option here is A. Next is a question on reproduction. The removal of the petal of a flower will affect A. Respiration, B. Pollination, C. Photosynthesis, and D. Respiration. So the petals in flower is the attractive part. That is what attracts the agents of pollination, like the birds and the insects. And so removing that petal is going to reduce the chance of the flower getting pollinated. That's option B. Next question is on movement and support system. The structure above represents A. Cervical vertebrae, B. Thoracic vertebrae, C. Lumbar vertebrae, and D. The causes. Okay, so the above diagram is that of the cervical vertebrae. That's option A, which is the first set of the vertebrae. There are 7 in numbers, labeled C1 to C7, starting with the axis and the atlas around the neck region. All right. Next is on movement and support system. The parts labeled I, and IV are respectively A. Transverse process, neural spine and centrum, B. Spine, centrum and spinal process, C. Spinous process, neural arc and the centrum, and D. Acetabulum, obturator foramina and spine. Alright, so let's look at the labeled part. The labeled part I here is what we call the spinous process. It's called the spinous process. The II is your neural canal. This is where the spinal cord, this is where it passes through. All right, so this vertebra basically protects the spinal cord. Then your III, that is your transverse process. Okay, the IV is the centrum or the body of this vertebrae that helps you to support the weight of the body. All right, or the weight of the region of the body above that vertebrae. While this V here, the last label here, is what we call the transverse foramen. It's called the transverse foramen. So the correct option here is C. The spinous process is your I, your II here is the neural arc, and your IV here is the centrum. This is the question on nutrition and digestive system. The yeast makes flour rise by the production of A. Carbon dioxide, CO2, B. Water, H2O, C. Oxygen, that's O2, and D. Ethanoic acid, that is C2H5OH. Alright, so raising in flowering product is due to the production of carbon dioxide, that's A. Next on body system, the excretory system specifically. Which of the following is not an excretory material? A. Carbon dioxide, B. Urine, C. Feces, and D. Sweat. Alright, so contrary to popular belief, the sweat is not a waste product primarily. It functions in temperature control and in the release of pheromones. That's option D. Next is a question on classification of living organisms. Plants that exhibit double fertilization belong to the A. Schizophyta, B. Angiospermae, C. Talophyta, and D. Bryophytes. Alright, so angiosperms, that's option B. They undergo double fertilization, where a sperm and egg cell forms a diploid zygote, and another fuses with two polar nuclei, forming a triploid cell, which develops into an endosperm. Next is on living organisms. Which of the following is unicellular? A. Earthworm, B. Planaria, C. Snail, and D. Amoeba. So living organisms are generally classified into two: the unicellular organisms consisting of only one cell, and the multicellular consisting of multiple cells. A. Earthworm. Earthworm is multicellular. Planaria is multicellular. Snail is multicellular. Amoeba is unicellular. Other examples of unicellular organisms include your Paramecium, Myclena, and Chlamydomonas. Option D. Next on body systems. Which organ is regarded as a composite organ? A. Lung, B. Kidney, C. Pancreas, and D. The liver. So composite organs are organs that are playing more than one role or function, that is functioning in, say, more than one system. So the pancreas is a composite organ. It functions as an hormonal gland and also as an accessory gland in digestion, because it secretes some. We have the pancreatic juice, which contains some digestive enzymes. Next is on body system. The vitamin that aids the process of blood clotting is vitamin A, A, B, D, C, E, and D, K. Alright, the vitamin K aids in blood clotting. That's option D. This is a question on the hormonal system. Which of the following is not a plant growth substance? You have A, auxin, B, gibberellin, you have C, testosterone, and D, cytokinin. All but testosterone is not a plant growth substance. Testosterone is an hormone that is found in animals. It's a sex hormone in the male animals. That's option C. Alright, we have a question on reproduction. A form of germination in which the cotyledon, that is the seed, is carried above the soil is known as A, epigyle, B, hypogyle, C, epicotyl, and D, hypocotyl. Alright, so there are two forms of germination in plants. We have the epigyle and the hypogyle. Now, in the hypogyle germination, the cotyledon remains underground until it eventually decomposes. That's an hypogyle germination. While in epigyle germination, the cotyledon is carried above the soil surface. So that makes A the correct option here. This type of germination is found in beans, pawpaw, tamarinds, and sunflower. While hypogyle germination, you find it in such crops as yam, you have your mango, peas, maize, etc. Next is a question relating to irritability. When the organism moves in response to an external stimuli, this is known as A, tropism, B, nastism, and G, geotropism, D, tacticism. So all of these options, they are movement with response to stimuli. Geotropism is just a form of tropism. So C is a form of what do you have in option A? The correct option here is option D, which is tacticism. Tacticism, or what we call tactic movement, they are non-directional movements that may or may not lead to growth. Such stimuli may be light, chemical, or heat. It may also be positive or negative depending on the direction in which the organism moves. So if the organism moves towards the stimuli, then it is positive. If it moves away from it, then it is negative. Next is a question on nutrition and the digestive system. A tapeworm absorbs food from the host with the help of its A, hooks, B, sucker, C, proglottides, and D, the entire body surface. Alright, the tapeworm is an endoparasite that is found in the alimentary tract of animals. It absorbs food from the host by division to its thin body surface. That's option D. Next is a question on movement and support systems. Which of the following shows hydrostatic skeleton? A, cockroach, B, earthworm, C, spider, and D, grasshopper. Alright, so soft body organisms like the worms and the snakes, they have hydrostatic skeleton, where fluid pressure is used to provide support and is used to aid in movement. Movement in such organism is by peristalsis, that is the rhythmic contraction and relaxation of the muscles of the body. Alright, so that results into some sort of proportion in a given direction. So it's B, the atom. Alright, this is a question on genetics and variation. A hemophilic man marries a woman that is not hemophilic and does not carry the traits. Which of the following is true of their children? A, all their sons will be carriers. B, all their daughters will be hemophilic. C, all their sons will be hemophilic. And D, all their daughters will be carriers. Okay, so hemophilia is a sex-linked trait that is expressed in female. Now, if the father is hemophilic, that means he has this gene here, that is SCY, all right, where this is the defective gene. Now, the mother is free, so the mother has the gene XX. Now, the resulting children from that union is going to be the XCS, all right, and the XY. Okay, so now the XY here is, of course, the gene for normal, male. All right, so the sons will be free; they will not be carrier, they will not be hemophilic. while the daughters, they would be carriers, all right, because they are going to have one, like a normal X gene from their mother and a defective gene from the father, the XC gene from the father. All right, so that makes the correct option. Next is a question on adaptation. Adaptation for life in a salty marsh is a feature of A. Alophytes, B. Hydrophytes, C. Xerophytes, and D. Epiphytes. Alright, so alophytes, they are adapted for life in salty habitats. That's option A. Hydrophytes, they are adapted to life in regions where you have abundant supply of water. Alright. Xerophytes, they are adapted to life in regions where there is low supply of water, like the desert and arid lands. While the epiphytes, they are basically plants that they get nutrients from moisture and some suspended particles. This is a question relating to body systems and pollution. How does carbon monoxide poison tissues? A. By killing the cells. B. By exploding the blood vessels. C. By combining with hemoglobin. And D. By dilating the blood vessels. Okay, so carbon monoxide, that is carbon 2 oxide, it competes with hemoglobin in the blood, disturbing it from binding oxygen to the blood. The hemoglobin is the pigment in the blood that helps it to bind the oxygen molecule. That's C. Next is a question on ecology. The wind vane measures A. Wind direction, B. Wind speed, C. Turbidity, and D. Relative humidity. The wind vane is used to measure wind direction. Alright, the wind speed is measured using what we call the anemometer. The wind anemometer. C, that's turbidity, is measured with a CT disc, and relative humidity is measured with an hygrometer. So A here is the correct option. Next is on classification of living organisms. Cold-blooded animals are regarded as A. Poikilothermic, B. Homoethermic, C. Homeostatic, and D. Polythermic. Alright, cold-blooded animals like fishes and reptiles, they are regarded as poikilothermic. They are said to be poikilothermic. That's option A. While the warm-blooded animals like the birds and mammals are regarded as homeothermic or endothermic. Next, during the bending of the arm, the biceps muscles A. Contracts and the tricep muscles relax. B. Relaxes and the tricep muscle contracts. C. Relaxes and the tricep muscle relaxes. And D. Contracts and the tricep muscles contracts. Alright, so the biceps and the triceps, they are muscles that are found in the upper, in the upper arm. They are found in the upper arm. Now, when you bend your arm, alright, now both muscles, they cannot acting like in the same manner. You cannot have both of them, relaxing or both of them contracting. So C and D, they are out. Alright, so we have A and B. Now, if you look at this diagram here, you have the bicep and you have the tricep. Now, when you bend your arm, your bicep is going to contract, that is, become smaller, while this tricep is going to relax, that is, to become longer. All right. While in the case of extension, the bicep is going to become like longer, that is relaxing, while the tricep is going to contract. So the correct option here is option A, that the bicep is going to contract, all right, that is reduce in length, while the tricep is going to relax, that is extend. Next is a question on living organisms. The possession of which of the following makes a glanna a plant? A. Flagellum, B. Pellicle, C. Eye spot, and D. Chloroplast. Alright, so the glanna is a unicellular organism that has both plant features and animal features. From those animal features is the possession of a flagella, a locomotive organ, and from the plant features that it has is the possession of the chloroplast, which is the photosynthetic pigment. So that is option D. The possession of chloroplast makes the glanna a plant. Next is on nutrient and digestive system. The element that is essential for the coagulation of blood is A. Iron, B. Calcium, C. Phosphorus, and D. Potassium. The calcium is a mineral that helps in the clotting of the blood. It also helps in nerve functioning and in the building of strong bones and teeth. This question is on nutrition. An association in which an organism benefits while the other organism while the other neither gains or suffer any harm, is known as A, parasitism, B, commensalism, C, predation, and D, competition. All right, so there are different feeding relationship between organisms. We have parasitism, we have commensalism, we have mutualism or symbiosis. A relation where one organism benefits while the other organism does not benefit, and it does not suffer any harm. All right, is what is termed as commensalism. That is option B. In parasitism, however, one of the organism, the parasite, is going to be benefiting from the other organism, which is regarded as the host, and it benefits in a way that it also harms the host. All right. While in mutualism, both organisms they derive mutual benefit from the relationship. So next is a question on respiration. In an experiment to demonstrate respiration, lime water turns milky as a result of the release of A, oxygen, B, carbon dioxide, C, hydrogen sulfide, and D, carbon monoxide. Right, the correct option here is option B. So the carbon dioxide that is produced by the animal that is used in that experiment is going to react with the lime water, that's what calcium hydroxide, forming calcium thiazocarbonate. All right, it forms calcium thiazocarbonate, which turns the lime water milky. Now, if the carbon dioxide is continuously passed through that lime water, then that milky solution is also going to clear out due to the formation of calcium hydrogen thiazocarbonate. Sex-linked characters are A, linked to Y chromosomes and recessive, B, linked to X chromosomes and recessive, C, linked to Y chromosomes and dominant, and D, linked to X chromosomes and dominant. All right, sex-linked characters like hemophilia, they are connected to the X chromosomes. All right, and they are recessive. It takes a homozygous defective gene to express that character. All right, before the character can be expressed, it takes an homozygous defective gene. So that's option B. They are linked to the X chromosomes and they are recessive. All right, so that's it for this video. We really appreciate that you tagged along to the end of the video. If you're new to this channel, endeavor to subscribe, also like and share our content. Check out our playlist, our physics crash courses, chemistry crash courses, biology crash courses. They contain videos that are tailored for examination candidates like you, and for others who want to get an overview of a topic or just get revise or prepare for an examination, other examination besides the UTME exam. Don't also forget to practice free UTME at exams.scholaf.com. Like, put yourself in the exam situation. Also, you can take modular quizzes. Like, if you've studied the topic in physics, chemistry, or biology, you can take some of our modular quizzes at exams.scholaf.com. Wish you all the best in your examination.